Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's Asset Hub webinar, Managing Permissions and Adding Team Members. My name is Natalie, and I am on the marketing team here at Entertainment Partners, and I have with me my colleague Stephanie from our account management team, who will be leading you through today's tutorial. Now let's take a quick look at what we're going to cover today. Today's webinar is designed for Asset Hub clients who have permissions to the studio, division, or franchise series level, and we are going to cover user permissions as well as how to add team members at each level. Now, while Stephanie is going to be walking you through today's demo, I'm going to be monitoring the Q&A for any submitted questions, so please feel free to write in with questions as you think of them throughout the webinar. You can submit questions by clicking on the Q&A function that you should see at the bottom of your screen in that Zoom menu bar, and we're going to take some time following the demo today to answer questions. After today's webinar has been completed, you are going to receive a few resources from us, and this is going to include a recording of today's webinar so you can go back and revisit it at any time, as well as a link to the SyncOnSet support site, which is support.synconset.com. That is a new support site that we launched at the beginning of this year, and it is where you can find all of our help materials, and this includes help articles, as well as recordings of past webinars. We are also going to provide you with a link to the productioncommunity.com. This is a resource offered by Entertainment Partners where you can find their Master Series webinars, which cover topics ranging from the business of production to production technology, including Asset Hub, and you can connect with other industry professionals like yourself. All right, and with that, I am going to pass things over to Stephanie, and let's go ahead and start the demo.
Awesome. Thanks, Natalie. Hi, everyone. So first, let's start out by taking a look at the path of our learning journey today. So first off, we're going to go over permissions and adding users at the studio level, permissions and adding users at the series franchise level, permissions and adding users at the division level, and then after that, some best practices and our support resources that'll just kind of add on to a little bit of what Natalie just went over. Give me just one moment and I'm going to switch over to our demo. All right. So first off, SyncOnSet Asset Hub is the first digital system designed for studios to track and manage their physical assets. Today, we're going to go over permissions and how to add users into Asset Hub at the studio, project, and division levels. So let's go ahead and get started. First off, let's go over permissions and how to add users at the studio level. So you'll see here we have the main Asset Hub page. When you first log in, it's going to automatically default you to whichever permissions you have for the very first tab here in this upper kind of left corner area. From this Asset Hub default page, we can see we're currently on the studio level, which you can see here. And from here, you're going to click on the top navigation bar and click on the admin tab. You can see we've added a few users with different levels of permissions from this view. So we have our studio owners, studio managers, and a series franchise owner. So we'll go over how to add in all of those different types of users. First up, we have the studio owner user. So I'm going to click over here to a help article that's available for everybody on the call. It's on our help site, as Natalie went over, support.synconset.com. And as I read through them, I'm just going to click through this article as well so you can follow along. So first up, we have the studio owner. So these permissions include full read and write access to everything in the studio. This is the highest level of access and is managed only by the account manager here at SyncOnSet. So if you are a studio user and there's anything in your Asset Hub that you want to change or modify or see if anything can be added and customized for you, please feel free to reach out to your account manager here at SyncOnSet and we can help you out with that. So next up, we have the studio manager user. So I'm going to click on studio manager here and we can see the permissions here. So these permissions include full access to all series and franchises and divisions in a studio. You can create new series and franchises. You can add studio managers and add or remove series franchise users. You can create and update assets. You can move assets across all series and franchises within the studio. And you can manage departments and required fields. So let's go ahead and go over how to add a studio manager. So I'm going to click back up here on Asset Hub and scroll to the top of this page. And we'll see this orange plus button on all of the pages that we go over today. So I'm going to click on the orange plus button and it defaults to the series franchise owner. But again, if you have studio manager access, then you will be able to see the studio manager bubble here and you will click on that. So to add in the studio manager, you're going to add their email twice. So I'm just going to add in an example here. And I'm going to copy that and add it here. And then if you have requests and approvals on your studio, activated on your studio, then you'll also be able to click on this initial approver permission button if you want somebody to have initial approver access for any approval and requests on assets that you have within your studio. Once that is complete, you're going to hit this blue save button. And then you'll scroll down here to the bottom. And anybody that has been invited and has not yet logged in, you'll see under this lower invites box. Again, that's going to apply to every single page we go over today, but it'll help you keep an eye on what users you've added in and who has actually who has actually signed in to the account. What will also happen throughout our webinar today is once you add in a user across the board anywhere in Asset Hub, it'll actually automatically send them an email to their email address, prompting them to register and log into Asset Hub so that you don't have to do so manually. It will automatically do that as soon as you click that save button. All right, so let's go over our last type of user that can be added at the studio level. So I'm going to click back over here on user permissions. And this time I'm going to click on series franchise owners. So there are a couple different ways to add in series franchise users. The permissions are the same, so let's go over those, and then I'll show you those two different options in Asset Hub. So first off, the permissions include access to all departments on a project. They can move assets across all projects within the series and franchise. They can add or remove project users within the series and franchise. They can create and update assets and the option to view historical assets. So let's go back up here to Asset Hub again. And once again, there are two different ways to do this. We are currently in the studio view, so let's go over how to add in the series franchise owner from the studio level. So once again, you're going to click on the orange plus button in the upper right corner. And then you'll go ahead and add in their email twice again, like we did previously. And we'll copy that, paste it here. And you'll see it automatically defaults to series franchise owner. So from here, what you are going to want to do is add in any of the series or franchises that you have in Asset Hub, and you're going to grant that user permission to one or however many of those series or franchises they need access to. A cool thing to keep in mind before we go ahead and click on some of those is if you are adding in a user, for example, a production coordinator, asset manager, or other type of production level user, you can select just the series and franchise that they are currently working on, which we'll go over in just a moment. And if the user you are adding is a studio coordinator, a studio level asset manager, or some other type of studio level user that may work with multiple productions, you can actually add them into as many series or franchises that they work with and that they need access to. So let's go ahead and go over that. So I'm going to click on choose series franchise here. And we can see a whole list of all of the series and franchises that we have added into Asset Hub. So you have the option of scrolling down the list, or if you're looking for a particular project, then you can go ahead and type in the project name. So I'm going to type in funny here. And for the example of the production coordinator or production level users for the franchise series owner, let's go ahead and just click on this one. And then once you have all of the series of franchises for that one person, then you can go ahead and click on save. And of course, once again, it's going to send them an email prompt. So as far as the studio level users for series franchise owners, so studio coordinators and things like that, let's go ahead and click on this one more time. And I'm going to remove my search here. And then I'm just going to click on a few of these so you can see you can add them to multiple series or franchises at the same time. So you can see here we have 5 items selected. Let's go ahead and deselect one of those. Last but not least, this view historical assets, it will be checked by default. And what this means is the user has access to view any assets that have moved off of the series or franchises that they have access to. And of course, if you don't want them to have this permission, just deselect the box here. And when you click that save button, it'll just give them the access directly to those series and franchises that you have granted them access to. I'm going to go ahead and leave this view historical assets on. And then once again, I'm going to click save. So you'll see once again down here, I added in test 2. So what will happen under the invites until they log in is it'll show a separate invite for each of the different series and franchises that user has been added to. So again, it's kind of a good thing to, whenever you're in the studio level, just go ahead and click on admin. You can see who's logged in. And if you want to send them a reminder to log in, instead of doing that manually, you can click on resend invites and it'll resend an invite to their email for all of the users that are added into this little invites box down here. All right. So lastly, on the studio manager level, if you need to change any user permissions, you can actually just click anywhere on their name and you can change their studio permissions from here. So if somebody's a studio manager and you don't want them to have initial approver permission anymore, you can deselect that. For example, if someone is a studio manager and you just want them to have series and franchise owner access from now on, we can click on that bubble and then you'll go ahead and just select the projects that we just went through. All right, so next up, we're going to go over permissions and how to add in users as the series and franchise level. So since we just went over the series franchise user being added in from the studio level, let's go ahead and go straight to the series or franchise and adding in the series franchise owner from that level. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this franchises tab here. And one thing I do want to go over is we do get questions about franchises and series. So what franchises are features or films, and what series are television shows. So, just based on which tab we're on, you'll see currently that we see our features or our films here. If we click on series, we have our TV shows. All right, let's go ahead and click on webinar project. We're going to go into that franchise today. And then you'll see this top navigation bar has changed a little bit. So instead of the word admin, where you go and add in the team from the studio level, you're going to click on the team tab within the series or franchise level. It looks pretty similar, but the wording's just a little bit different since we are on the series and franchise level and not the studio level. All right, so once again, permissions for the series franchise owner are access to all departments on a project. They can move assets across all projects within the series franchise. They can remove project users within the series franchise, can create and update assets, and they can access studio asset search, but they can only edit assets within their series franchise. So once again, let's go ahead and click on this orange plus button. And we see here that it defaults to department user. So for this case, since we're still going over the series franchise owner, I'm going to click on this bubble. And once again, you'll see that you have the email address that you need to enter twice. So let's say test 3 now. Oop, if I can type today. All right, we'll copy that. All right, and the permissions that we have on here, once again, viewing historical assets. So if any assets have moved from this webinar project, maybe to webinar part 2 project, and they have moved off of this specific franchise onto part 2, then what you can actually do is still view any historical assets that originated on this franchise. If you don't want somebody to have that permission, then of course, once again, you can go ahead and deselect that permission. For view asset search, we have a studio-wide asset search available. So if this is clicked off, it allows users to view the studio-wide asset search, but does not allow them to edit or modify any of those assets that they find anywhere else in the studio. It just allows them to view any assets that may not be on their series or franchise. So for example, Maybe you're starting a new project and you want to search the studio for a specific asset that you might have seen on another project that was used underneath that specific studio. You can go ahead and search for that in case you want to use it for your project and take it up to the studio level or whatever your studio requirements are internally. All right, last but not least, once again, we have our blue save button here. So once we click that, since I've not logged in yet, we have it down here in our invites. And they will receive an email to their inbox and registering. It'll prompt them to register and log in. So once again, you guys do not have to send any kind of information over to them manually. But if they haven't logged in a few days and you check in here and they're still under this invites box, you can click on resend invites and it'll resend that invite directly to their inbox. All right, last but not least here on the series and franchise level, we want to add in department users. So let's go over the permissions on that since we haven't gone over that yet. I'm going to click on department users here. So the permissions for department users include creating and updating assets. They can create new assets, view restricted asset information, view the asset detail page, and they can upload accounting ledgers, which we do recommend for just accounting. You can see a screenshot here, but we're going to go over that here in the Asset Hub site. All right, so let's go ahead and once again click on this orange plus button. And as we saw previously, it does default to department user. So if you are a manager, a studio manager, or a series franchise owner, and you're going to add in the department users, it will default to this. So you don't have to go searching for another bubble to click on. So let's go ahead and let's go ahead and start with this process. So let's add in test email number 4. And we're going to enter that twice here. And on this level, you're going to want to add in their title or their role on the production. So let's just say, I'm just going to add in production manager. And then you can add in one or multiple departments for each of these individual users that you add in. So as you're going through your departments, say your costumes, props, set deck, hair and makeup, transportation, whatever it might be, if any of those roles only need access to one department, then you can do that. So say, for example, we have our costume person. So you can go ahead and search for costume, click on costume, and once you have all of their permissions set and you click save, that user will only have visual access and editing access to that one singular department. So you don't have to worry as your production and your crew start logging into Asset Hub to work with their assets. They don't have to worry about scrolling through a whole list of every single asset from all of the different departments. They will just see the ones that they need to see. For example, if you have an art department coordinator or somebody that needs access to multiple departments, you can add them to multiple departments as well. So let's go ahead and deselect costume here. And I want to select maybe our couple set departments and then maybe the props department as well. So that specific user that you're assigning those departments to, they will have visual access and edit access if you give them that permission to set deck, set operations, and the props team. On accounting basis, let's go ahead and go over some of the permissions as well. So first off, if you want to add in anybody as a read-only user, you want to make sure that these boxes that are defaulted here are deselected. And that way, when they log in, they're able to just see the asset, but they're not able to see any restricted information. They're not able to edit that asset or any other information that you don't want them to have access to. They're just able to, kind of log in, take a look at it, and that's it. It's pure read-only status. Let's go ahead and reselect these. Again, we have our view restricted asset information here, and if you have that deselected, then it's going to block any kind of financial information or anything like that that comes over from, for example, an accounting ledger and is uploaded into Asset Hub. Viewing asset detail page, when you click on the asset, there's a lot of information and detail there. So that's going to be defaulted as well. If you want read only, just make sure that's deselected. Next, we have the upload ledgers permission. So again, this is really just allowing users and in particular accountants to upload ledgers into Asset Hub. This does require the permission to edit assets and view restricted asset information. So these two will need to stay selected if you select the upload ledgers permission. Unlinking transactions, this allows a user to remove transactions from an asset. So say, for example, if they merge a couple items together to create one singular asset and they accidentally merged a couple that are incorrect that shouldn't be matched together, there is the option to unlink that. It is not a super common case, so we don't suggest clicking on that by default, but that is an option for you. And if you have any questions about that, please reach out to your account manager here at SyncOnSet. Last but not least, we've gone over this a couple times as well from the series and franchise owner permission, but viewing historical assets. Once again, for example, if there is another project created after this webinar project and it's webinar project part 2, and some assets have moved over from the webinar project over to part 2, you're able to view those historical assets no matter where they've moved to. Once again, once you add in the user and complete all of the fields that have the asterisk by the names, then you can click on the save button and you'll see it on your invite list, and that email invite will go directly to that person's inbox. All right, so lastly, if you're a studio manager and you need to change any series franchise owner permissions or department user permissions, once again, you can click on their name and you can modify it as needed. So I'm going to click on a name here, and it'll pop up that same pop-up box that we just saw, and you can click or deselect anything on this page or add or remove specific departments for that particular user. All right. If you want to remove a user completely, you're going to see this throughout Asset Hub as well. You can just click on the trash icon in line with each of their names. You'll see that on the invites that have been accepted and also the invites that have not. So if you added in a wrong email, you can click the trash can, click remove, and then that will remove the person from being able to have access into Asset Hub. All right, so now last up, let's go over permissions and how to add users at the division level. So first, let me go ahead and click on my article here. So for our division team members, their permissions include editing assets, viewing restricted asset information, viewing the asset detail page, and then they can access the studio asset search, but can only edit assets within their division. So the only person that's able to actually add in the division team members are the studio managers at the studio level, which we went over previously in our webinar. So let's go ahead and click on Asset Hub here. And you can see we're currently in the franchise since we just went over the series and franchise users. So for this case, I'm going to click on this little down arrow here, and I'm going to click on divisions. So this will take me to our divisions view. Again, if you have permissions for this, this will be for the studio manager. And I'm going to click on the archives division. So you'll see once again that this top navigation bar has changed a little bit, but the team tab still has the same wording as it did on the series and franchise page. So I'm going to click on the team tab. And once again, you'll see this orange plus button over to the right-hand side. So that's where we're going to start. Let's click on that. Let's go ahead and add in, I believe we're on test number 5 email here. Add that in a couple times. And then their title or their role on the production. That might seem a little bit misleading, but you can just add in their title within that specific division or archive. So let's just say this person is an archive coordinator. And then we have our additional permissions down here. So let's go ahead and go over those. We have edited assets, view restricted asset information, and view asset detail page. So if you're wanting to add in a read-only user, you can go ahead and deselect these, and they're only able to view those assets within the division, but they're not able to edit or see any private information that the studio manager might not want them to see. We also have the view asset search. So it allows that user to go into the studio-wide asset search and search for any asset throughout the entire studio. So whether they have permission to it or not, they're not able to edit it, but they will be able to actually view it and see where that asset is currently located. Once you have all your permissions selected here and you have all of your required fields completed, we'll click on Save. And once again, it'll send them an email to their inbox prompting them to register and log in to Asset Hub. If you are a studio manager and you need to change any division user's permission, you can click on their name and modify as needed. So you can go ahead and make them read only or grant them additional permissions here. If you want to remove them completely, just look for the little trash icons in line with their name, and it'll come up with a little pop-up box, and you can remove them from the Asset Hub permissions that you granted them. All right, last but not least, you can click on this little blue chat bubble down here in the bottom right-hand corner, and that goes directly to our support team if you have any additional questions. You can also reach out to them by email at support@synconset.com, and they are available between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Pacific, Monday through Friday. We hope you found this tutorial useful today, so give us just a moment while we switch back to our presentation. All right, so let's go over some best practices now. So when you're on the admin tab at the studio level or the team tab at the series, franchise, or division level, just look for the orange plus button to add in new users. You can always adjust user permissions by clicking on their name and just clicking the little boxes and adjusting their user permissions as needed. You can trash a user on any of the pages by clicking the trash icon in line with their name. Users that have not yet logged into Asset Hub will be in the invite section at the bottom of the admin or team tabs. After this demo, we suggest bookmarking our help center, support.synconset.com, and you will be able to find the help article that we went through today that goes over all of the permissions. And lastly, please reach out to your account manager here at SyncOnSet if you have any questions, or click on that blue chat bubble to reach our support team. If you're unsure who your account manager is here, you can still click on that support team and they will be able to send you over to us and give you the permission or give you the person's name that you will have access to based on the studio that you work with.
All right. Thank you so much for that demo, Stephanie. I just want to let everyone know that we are about to get started with the Q&A portion of today's webinar. So we want to give you a last chance to write in with any last lingering questions that you may have. And while you're doing that, we want to let you know that we are going to get to as many questions as we can. But if your question does not get answered live, please don't worry. We do record all questions that get submitted. And as I mentioned at the start of this webinar, we will be sending out additional information following today's webinar, and that may include answers to your questions. So it looks like we do have a couple of questions that have come in. So Stephanie, if you want to go ahead and get started with Q&A, I think we're in good shape.
All right, cool. Let's see here. So one of the questions we have is if I have permissions to add users to Asset Hub, once I add them in, will the user receive an email to log in? Yes, that is correct. So once you add the user and you click that blue save button when you have all of the required fields completed, the system will send an email to that user prompting them to register and log into Asset Hub. All right, next question we have here. If I am just added to a department on a project, can I add in other members of my team? That's a really great question. So if you're a department user in Asset Hub, you cannot add in additional users to your team. So what you'll need to do is reach out to your series or franchise owner on your project, which is usually the production coordinator, assistant production coordinator, sometimes a production secretary, maybe an asset manager, really depends on your project, but those are usually the most consistent cases. And they can add in any of your additional department users to Asset Hub and grant them access for you. Let's see. It looks like we have one more question here. So this is from a studio user. So if I have Studio Manager permissions, can I add users at all levels of Asset Hub? Yes, that is correct. So if you have Studio Manager permissions, you can add in other studio managers, the series and franchise owners, and department users, and also division users. So the Studio Manager permissions really cover the entire basis of the studio account within Asset Hub. So if you have any questions as a studio manager on kind of the best way to figure out how to add in users from different levels. Again, please reach out to our support team or your account manager, and we can help walk you through that. All right, I think that was the last question. So I'm going to hand it back over to Natalie.
All right, thanks, Stephanie. And thank you to everyone who submitted questions. And thank you for joining us today. Please remember that if you do think of any questions outside of today's webinar, you can always reach out to our team and get answers in pretty quick time. So we're just going to take a look at the ways to get in touch with our support team again. As Stephanie mentioned, you can always click on that blue chat bubble that you should see at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen when you are logged into Asset Hub, and that will give you direct access to our support team Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can always email them at support@SyncOnSet, or you can give us an old-fashioned phone call. We always love to hear from you. And outside of our support hours or any other time, if you want to head over to that support site, support.synconset.com, we have a wealth of help articles that are organized, and you will be able to find a category specifically for Asset Hub, and then they'll be broken down further for quick reference. And there's also a search bar, so you can also just type in whatever you might be looking for, and it will suggest articles for you. Okay, thank you to everyone again who took the time to join us for today's webinar. We hope that this was very informational to you when it comes to managing permissions and adding team members, and we hope that you can join us for future webinars. If you could please take a few moments to complete our feedback survey, we'd love to know how we did today and if we can improve our webinars in the future. We hope that everyone stays safe and healthy, and we see you at the next Asset Hub webinar. Have a lovely day, everyone.